There's a lot of anti-Washington sentiment. The President kind of touched on it today, said he hopes that you guys can work with Washington, not in spite of Washington. But I'm wondering, is there anything that goes on in Jeff City or St. Paul that Washington should consider adopting to the federal government itself? Is there some management practice you've implemented or once part of some program, something that perhaps the federal government should look at and say, hey, that's a great example of something we should do?
We had this novel idea of balancing budgets in the states, which brings a whole level of discipline and necessity to try to bring people together at each year. Which I think the states are just dramatically different. I mean, Governor Pawlenty may say differently than that, but our folks have to get together. They have to strike a deal each year, and we have to balance a budget. And that's fundamentally different than the mentality going on in Washington, D.C. at this point. And when the question is open-ended, instead of having an answer, I think it tends to do what's happening in D.C.
Beyond the budget process, is there some accountability measure you have as governor, or some management practice that goes on in Missouri, or even when you were Attorney General, that you say, hey, maybe Washington should consider this?
Well, I mean, we're very accountable to the public. I mean, as a governor, you see the people a lot. They're directly at you, and the performance measures of kids in schools and health care being provided and snow being taken off the highways, those are very, very real. They're not abstract to people. So I think that the basic services that we provide in the professional way that we get involved in natural disasters and other things and show the people that we're there to stand for them. It's much different than folks, I think, in kind of the culture of Washington, kind of walking away sometimes from problems and pointing their finger at somebody else.
Some of the reforms and accountability and improvements we've made in Minnesota that the federal government might be interested in and could benefit from would include Minnesota has a leading program to welcome back and reintegrate and support returning members of the military and their families, called the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon campaign, that's being modeled nationally. Number two, we've been a national leader on commitments to renewable energy, cleaner, more secure energy that's here in America and providing jobs and hopefully improving the environment as well. So we've been a leader in that. I hope the country would adopt some of that. And then a third one would be just our emphasis in education on performance pay and performance measurements in education compared to the old ways of seniority pay and costs and input measurements, as opposed to aligning the money to actually better results in learning. So we've done a great deal of that in Minnesota, and I think that would be something they might benefit from as well.
We've heard all this talk about transparency, and he's asking people to, for example, to go to a website and sign up to get a job with the federal government. Is any and all of that practical? When you hear all this talk about we're going to be more open and we're going to be more accessible.
I think it's real practical. I mean, in the state of Missouri, we have something called the Sunshine Law that allows the public to get documents in 3 days. They don't have to wait 25 years and file lawsuits under the Freedom of Information Act and think that there can be secret meetings. Every meeting has to be posted. The notes of those meetings have to be kept. If you do go in closed meetings for a very limited amount of time, it's a mentality that has developed at state governments where we're just far more open with the public. I mean, I guarantee you that while I'm not an expert on Minnesota law, I guarantee you that Governor Pawlenty spends more time listening to people, reacting to people in public, and that his agencies have more public meetings and more direct public input on decisions and policy than they do up here. I'm a long-time believer that I wouldn't want to run for Congress, but if I was up there, I'd rewrite the FOIA. It's absolutely absurd how long it takes people to get public records. The taxpayers pay for those documents. They pay for the lights in those meetings. They pay for the water in those meetings. They ought to be in them.
I concur. And with the migration of so much information and accessibility to the web, that of course is the tool of the present and the future. And so the more information we can make available on the web on financial transactions, the money that comes in, the money that goes out, the better. I know Missouri has a robust system like that. Minnesota does as well, and it's in the process of improvement. So people, particularly folks who are web-enabled, can track a lot from their home or from wherever they are on the internet, and we really have to maintain that commitment to being transparent and make it web-enabled so anyone, anywhere can get any information, with some limited exceptions, anytime they want it.